Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be going over the books that I read in the last week or two. I'm not really sure where I'm at with my updates, but I have gotten through a couple, so I figured I'd just update you on what I read. And I'm not going to do full reviews, so I'll try and keep it non-spoilery. But the first one is going to be, I'll put it here, Among the Pigeons, which is a Hercule Poirot novel by Agatha Christie. And this one was okay. It starts off with a lot of like political intrigue and things going on where this individual who's a prince, I believe, in like a foreign country, and he has these diamonds or these jewels that he's trying to hide, and then he entrusts them to a friend who then hides them, and then through circumstances they end up at this girls' school, at an all-girls school, hidden. And so then of course people start dying because people are after these jewels. So it's okay. The setup is meh. The characters are for the most part pretty forgettable. The fun comes in much later in the book when Hercule Poirot finally shows up. So I think that's the weakness of this story, is that Poirot is such a dynamic character that when you like have him at the end coming in and being like, and I just solved the mystery, it's not as fun for me to read. I really like his character, so I prefer to see him throughout the book and not just coming in at the end to solve it all. So yeah, that was Cat Among the Pigeons, and I was like 3.5 stars for me. So the next book I read was a recommendation, and it was Crota, because I was looking for monster books. So Crota is like it's a monster that's part of like Native American folklore and comes out of like is buried basically and comes out from underneath the earth after like this, I think they had an earthquake. So my main issue with Crota was, it's okay. It was fine. I like the monster, and like some of the like monster kills were really good and really like, and you know what I mean? Like they were like well written, and it's like, oh man, that's kind of, you know, scary and creepy, and you know, it's good, well written. But the main problem I have is like the reveal of the monster happens way too early. My main thing with anything that has like a monster or a creature or some kind of being that's like hunting you down and tracking you down, the sooner you show the audience what that looks like, the less scary it is. Like once it's revealed, like 90% of fear, in my opinion, is like the unknown. So once you know what the Crota is and you see it and it's described to you in full detail, it's like, oh, creepy, scary monster still, but meh. Also, this book reminded me of like an episode of Grimm, if anyone else watched that show, which I used to love. And I definitely had like that, like, oh, here's our monster of the week, the Crota. And so I liked it fine. There's some things that I didn't love, but it's the main characters are like the sheriff of the small town, and then a guy who's a game warden, I believe, and he's Native American. So he has like this ability to kind of see and understand that the Crota's reappeared, and like he's able to kind of come up with a plan to deal with it. The sheriff is in the dark, but he's, you know, the one who's discovering all the bodies. And my favorite part of the book was actually when they first discover like the first bodies, and they go with like the team of detectives to go like do all the crime scene stuff. I was like, oh, like they're getting all their crime scene stuff out, and they're doing like, oh, a plaster cast of the like footprints, like all that silly like detective stuff that's like procedural, but was for me fun. I was like, oh, this is nice. So it was okay. There was like an odd dream intimate scene that I was like, oh, I could have totally done without that, and just felt a little bit out of place. Also, the Native American character has a rant about like the white man and what the white man is used a lot in the derogatory, which, okay, like I can handle it. But I will say it was an odd rant to have, because the person he's talking to is the sheriff, who they find out is like a quarter Native American, and his grandma is actually part of the reason that they can have the knowledge to take down the Crota. So like he's not really ranting at the person about like, oh, the white man and the white man's teachings and, you know, all this stuff. Like it doesn't make sense for him to be mad at him. Like it just felt very odd and out of place, and like very towards the end of the book we're like, well, we just got to get in this thing about the white man and negativity here about them. And I'm like, okay. But would have been better placed, I think, with a different character, probably towards the beginning of the book. Because, I mean, you know, they could have established a character that was, you know, had some kind of antagonistic relationship with him or something where he could have said this, but that wasn't really the case. So the other characters, you know, most of them are going to get killed off, but that's the nature of monster stories. And I did think that it was nice that they gave one of the characters who is kind of the bad guy, but they gave like kind of a redemption arc. So there wasn't really any bad guys, which I felt like was also kind of good because it made it so that you're like, well, this is just how everybody would probably react in a small town to a situation like that. Like, they're the people that are going to try and be heroes, and they're the people who are going to try and take advantage of the situation. So anyway, overall, decent story, and I appreciate the recommendation. Okay, so lastly, I'm going to talk about 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which I have here along with my notes, but ignore the notes. It's just holding this book open. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. So me and Jules Verne, we have like a kind of a complicated relationship, and that I read these books and I'm like, I want to like you. I want to enjoy this book, but I just don't know that I do because it's Jules Verne. There's a lot of information that I just feel is so unnecessary to the story, but that I feel like he felt so like, I have to add this because otherwise how will you not you won't understand. So to me, like the fun of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, it's obviously like, the story starts off with a professor, Aronnax, I'm probably saying it wrong. I will put the names here. Who him and his servant can say, they go to be part of this crew that's going to hunt what they believe to be a giant narwhal, which I thought was really interesting. And that was like what got me in the beginning. Was I did think it was interesting that they came to the conclusion that the only thing that could be attacking these ships out in the ocean was like a giant narwhal, like one so huge that it has like, you know, this giant narwhal horn or tusk or whatever they are. I think it's actually a tooth. Anyway, that's attacking these ships, and that was obviously like the only conclusion they could come to was like giant narwhal. So they're out there hunting. They meet with Ned Land, who's Canadian, and he's their like harpooner, whaler. You know, he's supposed to help them capture or kill this narwhal. So those three end up getting, like this all happens in the beginning. If you've seen the movie or you know anything about the story, you know that they get knocked off the ship into the water. They get saved by the Nautilus, which is the like submarine vessel that is what has actually been attacking these ships. And then they're with Captain Nemo going through, you know, on the ship that they can't get off of, because Captain Nemo's like, well, we saved you, you're here, you're not getting off, this is forever, like, enjoy. I like the character of Captain Nemo. I do feel like he's one of those rare, actually morally gray characters where he does a lot of things that are very questionable, but he does always believe he's doing them for the right reason. So he saves a lot of people, but he's also doing a lot of shady stuff and obviously keeping them hostage on the Nautilus. Shady. But I think that that's where most people don't write really good morally gray characters, is they don't understand that like the point of being morally gray is like there's good and bad that you do, but you do always think you're doing the right thing. You know, there's like, yeah, there's black and white, and you're in this middle part of like, well, could be doing wrong, could be doing right, but this is what I'm gonna do. Like that's more to me like a morally gray character. So my main issue with this book is gonna be, there's a whole chapter, and this is not like, this is just a whole chapter called Some Figures. And this is just the like measurements and the workings and the, you know, the way that the Nautilus runs and the, you know, like how everything happens on the Nautilus. And I'm like, okay, so I'm here for like the undersea adventure, the monsters, like things, you know, it's like this like creepy feeling of being trapped under the water and, you know, all this stuff that like you would see, like the shipwrecks, like there's all of that, but it's so bogged down by like must give you facts. Like you need to know when we find, this happens, the lost city of Atlantis, like let me tell you about this architecture. Let me tell you about these rocks. Let me tell you about this rubble. Like, I don't care. Let me enjoy myself. And I think the issue is that Jules Verne always, from the ones that I've read, he writes from the perspective of a like learned person or an intelligent person learning from another intelligent person. So if Ned Land would have been the audience, like the person that we're seeing everything, like the eyes, like we're seeing everything through his eyes, we would have probably like gotten much less of all of this because he wouldn't have understood. But because we're with Aranax, he's very intelligent. So he is like, oh, I'm just soaking in all this knowledge. And I'm like, soak it in a little faster and let's get to like some giant squid attack because I'm ready to move on from this. Overall, it's okay. I do think Jules Verne is a good writer. It's just not my style, and I get so bogged down by like information dump, which this is similar to like Michael Crichton's writing, which doesn't bother me as much because I feel like at least he spaces it out with like large information dump followed by like, okay, here's something really, really interesting. But much like with Michael Crichton, I don't know that I can like judge what he's saying, like his science correct, is his like measurements and terms and all of that, his categorizing of like sea creatures and sea life. I'm like, I don't know, he could be telling me anything. And I'm just like, sure, so probably right. It's pretty much like as much as I know about, how to splice in dino DNA with frogs, like I'll take your word for it for now. So yeah, it's okay. It's perfectly fine book, but it's definitely just not my style. And I do think if you like, I'll hold it up there. I do think if you like classics, it's a fun classic to read because it feels a bit ahead of its time and definitely has a lot of really interesting things that I'm just like, oh wow, like that's really cool that they could, we're thinking about that stuff and the deep sea diving and how you would do all of that. It's cool. I like it. Anyway, so I'm glad I read it. I feel like it's a classic for a reason, and even though I don't feel like I necessarily will read it again, I'm glad I did pick it up. And this one also has an Around the Moon. I don't know if I'll get to that anytime soon, but this is 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and then Around the Moon. And I don't know much about that story. I do know that I think that this is part of a 3-part series, which I did not know either. And the first one being In Search of the Castaways, which I do want to read. And then this one, and then there's one called like The Mysterious Island, I think. So I didn't know that this was like part of a trilogy. Anyway, that's all I've got for this video, but let me know what you're reading in the comments and let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought. If you really love Jules Verne, or if you have like oh no, you should read this one of his, like I definitely will. I'm open to that. And I appreciate you guys watching and subscribing. Please like this video, and I am trying to get to 100 subscribers like before the end of the year, so we're so close. And I really appreciate it. Let me know what you guys are reading and we'll talk soon.